I think for episode 5, we're going to jump right into the Queen's pirate, Sir Francis Drake. I think Samuel was right that Francis Drake came to Vancouver Island. But when I talked to him on the phone and told him I think Drake was fighting the Spanish in Barkley Sound, he's pretty stubborn and adamant that he knows exactly where Drake went. There's no doubt he would have gone onto the east side of the island, and one of his coins was found near Victoria and one up at Campbell River. As I mentioned in one of my episodes, there was a coin found in a midden in Sarita River.
We just need to look at his maps.
The top map is the Vinland map. Obviously the Vikings didn't draw it, because it's only 500 years old.
I think Drake
Figured out where the Viking kingdom of Vinland was.
in keeping with the secrecy, he drew the island reversed. Compare the two maps and it's pretty obvious. Vinland is Vancouver Island.
From what I understand, all of Drake's maps were destroyed, and others recreated them.
Anybody that knows Barkley Sound would know that map 3 shows Pachina Bay, Zardas Island, and the 4 small islands. Number 1 shows him off the Broken Group Islands, with Mount Ozart and the Sawtooth Range and the Deer Group Islands. Number 2 shows him being towed past the Deer Group Islands, down Imperial Eagle Channel with the mines in the background. One thing about Drake, he took down the Spanish Armada
in England. I think he also took down the Spanish here as well. I was told by a native elder where his fort was, and I think this elder was one of the descendants of the people Drake left behind in 1577. These families were the Queen's spies.
This is a very strategic move. Having ships pulling you means that you have power when nobody else has power if there's no wind.
He would have had his men, who lived with the Indians, building ships and preparing for this attack. The ships of the Spanish Armada would have been sitting ducks. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, I tried hard to tell the government what I found. Evidence of the Queen's pirate. The evidence is here, there's no doubt about it. Drake found more than just the lost Viking kingdom of Vinland. His maps show it. This map shows the dome and the 4 mountain peaks. There's no doubt this is where the real Nova Albion is. This map is really incredible. It shows the actual mine. So there's no doubt Drake was here. The easy part is finding the evidence. The hard part, having the powers that be get out from behind their desks and get off their fat asses and prove he's here. This is Aaron. He owns a local dive club. Told him where the ships are. He's dove on.
So introduce yourself and let me know what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the versatile captain. But yeah, I'm kind of a guy that goes around and does a lot of things. I'm one of the local commercial divers here. I do a lot of forestry stuff with falling and arborist work.
So Aaron.
Yeah.
So I told you about my theory about Francis Drake.
Yeah, you did, and I'm
and
curious.
You dove on those ships. We're not going to say where they were.
Yeah. I promise I won't.
But they're boulder piles.
Yeah, they're boulder piles. They're very symmetrical boulder piles.
So you think they're ships?
Well, they got to be. They got to be some sort of ships because the boulder piles are so symmetrical as far as the oval shapes and the ship shapes.
Yeah.
And these are ballast piles, right?
Yeah.
So they got to be. I mean,
So when you told the guys from the, what was it?
the
Archaeological Society, what did they say about it?
A little elusive, only because I think that they're not that confident about what these might be.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And they probably shouldn't be in that spot because it's too narrow.
Yeah.
Too tight a spot to get into for a big ship like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a very large ballast pile, and to actually have that right in the middle of the bay there, it's pretty distinctive spot.
Okay, so we're gonna go dive on it, and we're gonna find out what's really there.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend some time. I've dived on it quite a few times already, and we're gonna spend some time on it this time around, and just really get a feel of whether or not we're looking for something, or whether we're just looking at a pile from Gold Marge or something like that.
Okay, thank you, Salty Sea Captain.
Okay, no problem. All right, Billy.
Forget the fact that this court document says I'm void of reality, found no archaeological proof of the royal family. The heritage stuff should be here, and it is protected. It says, physical evidence of human habitation or use before 1846. This is what we call a CMT, a culturally modified tree. Technically, a CMT is not an indigenous modified tree, it's a culturally modified tree. So why can't we find evidence of the Spanish here? It's actually quite simple. The logging company doesn't want to find evidence of Spanish or English in this area. Stevie Smith does the archaeological impact assessments looking for CMTs. He refuses to acknowledge any habitation other than indigenous habitation. He's incredibly clueless. He's standing in a second growth dead zone, culturally modifying a second growth tree. Watch that YouTube video and you'll see why we call CMTs Cut Me Today. I find this part of the Heritage Act sneaky. In 1846, if a tree is culturally modified before that, it's a culturally modified tree. If this tree was found 500 years from now and the Heritage Act didn't change, it would not be classed as a culturally modified tree. Go back to my discoveries.
Tucked under the back of the box is a rondel dagger. This was a type of stiff-bladed dagger used in Europe in the late Middle Ages, from the 14th century onwards. The end of this handle has copper rivets holding it together and X etched in it. As you can see, the rust color indicates there was a steel blade that rusted away.
The one skull there, this skull, appears to be very old.
2 skulls and 2 daggers. Like most of the caves with boxes, there is rope, and the Sarita Cave is a good example. But there's only stories of swords, daggers, and muskets found in these caves. Although this is what is called an Indian bentwood box, it was made with a metal saw, and if you look at the side of the box, you'll see it has saw marks in it.
Look at the box again. Notice this little, looks like a little piece of braided string. Probably the stuff they used to tie the boards together.
To give you an idea of how big this cave is, from the bush entrance it is 70 feet to the box, and it's about another 60 feet from the box to where I am now. What's interesting is if you look at the box, it looks as if the box sits on a mound of beach rock. I can only assume there's something buried under it, and the box marks it. I would say from the box to the farthest point I can see, it must be at least 150 feet. This is where it gets interesting. 40 feet from the box, you can hear waves crashing, and it's from this point where the cave branches and goes to the ocean entrance. When I first found this cave, it was from the ocean in a boat, but it was impossible to enter from the ocean because of an impassable wall of wood. I took my binoculars, looked past the wood and saw light, and knew there had to be a back entrance. When I entered the cave from the bush entrance, the wall of wood was like a wall placed to hold back the blast rock covered up against it. This wall was over 6 feet high.
It's roughly 60 feet to there, and maybe 50 feet into there.
Since I last entered the cave, the wall has collapsed by the waves of big ships going past. I can now see the exposed wood has saw marks in it. If you look at this piece, it's identical to the saw marks on the board. This means whoever made the box did so in the cave. What's also interesting is the wood all seems to be burnt. This makes me think this was another light beacon. The obvious thing to do now is to go to the shore that the cave looks at and look for another beacon. Clearly a grotto has been blasted out of this cliff face. Once we went ashore, we could see this grotto is in the perfect spot for light beacon.
If you build a fire in the Dagger Cave, it would look like a golden strip on the water. It'll point right at the mines. So it's a great spot for a beacon. The Spanish Armada would have been not moored here. It's too tight. This is where the Spanish would have had their mining camp. Unfortunately, it's sitting right under a log dump.
We climbed up, expecting to find evidence of a beacon. We were not disappointed. I was told there was a skull in here. Before the skull disappeared, it was said to have had a bullet hole in it. This was years ago when I was told.
Yeah. See the rope?
Oh, that, yes. Oh, yes. That is old.
I was told 50 years ago there was a skull here. and then stacks of boards. You'd build a fire there, and it can be seen from inside the Banfield Harbor. Back at the Beacon Cave, we see the bones laid about. Before these bones were disturbed, what would have been here was an empty box and bones laid out as if they were markers. It's no secret the Spanish had mined in Sarita Bay. Sarita means Sarah in Spanish, and Sarah translates to princess. The island next to what would have been the Spanish town was named Santa Maria, which translates to St. Mary. These two places can be seen from the beacon, and other than the Spanish island San Jose, which was a Spanish ship sunk in 1708, they are the only Spanish-named places in the area. In the 1500s, the Spanish began to explore and colonize the west coast of the Americas in search of gold and land. In the later end of the 1500s, Francis Drake was hot on the trail of the Spanish, and despite what the history books say, I think he was a step ahead of them and found more than we give him credit for. This coast was vast and appeared barren of suitable harbors till they passed by a huge strait. To their surprise, they would have sailed straight into the huge sound that met all their needs. For the next 200 years, the Spanish played cat and mouse on this coast, till finally in 1790 a treaty was signed, ending 200 years of hostility. This video is just the tip of the iceberg that proves once and for all history has finally been found.
The Spanish would have had their mining camp in Sarita Bay. What they wouldn't have known was that Francis Drake had teamed up with the local natives in the Banfield Harbor. These natives didn't just have the men of Francis Drake helping them. They had all the equipment from Drake's ships that he scuttled in the Banfield Harbor. I think for the next 200 years, the English had spies in this area. They were in the caves. And then in 1790, when the Nootka Treaty happened, they sacrificed all the boys in the cave. Before I get into why there's no evidence of the Spanish here, I want to read something again. Crown was of the opinion that de Montney has no grasp on reality, and without any archaeological proof. I'm going to help Girl out in court soon, and I'm going to give this to the Crown Council and ask them if they know what defamation of character means.
See, all these caves are supposed to be First Nations burial caves. But, you know...
They could have been participants, but they're not First Nations people in them.
No.
They're definitely Spanish descent.
Yeah, that's what I think,
and
yeah.
there wouldn't be a cross in a
No,
First Nations people.
no. But I took a guy that owns Little Rock Drilling and Blasting, because he's going to be mining up on the mountain with me. I took him into the cave on Edward King. You know what he said? He says the only way this rock got in here is if somebody put black powder in it and took the ceiling down, because there's stress fractures. What's that?
They blasted the cave at Sequata, but I don't know who.
I don't know where that is.
Just above Nitnat Narrows.
Oh, really?
1,000 bodies in there.
Really?
Yeah, from Nitnat and from Nia Bay.
And who blasted that?
They don't know who actually did it, but they sealed it.
Oh.
No, Sequata. Just as you come around the corner from Nitnat Narrows.
Really?
Is that the ones that PB and stuff? Yeah, no, smallpox. It was all smallpox. Smallpox, yeah. They were all going in there. They took the whole works in there.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much history here, it's crazy.
I can now say without a shadow of a doubt, the 1,000 people who were walked into that cave were the people of Nova Albion. Tribal warfare on this coast was brutal and savage. They would not walk their own people into a cave and blow the entrance. They would go to the town and they would grab all the people there and walk them into the cave, men, women, and children. It was their way of getting rid of this horrible disease that could have wiped out all of the native tribes on this coast. To find the people of Nova Albion, the government has to get off their ass and dig out that cave.